Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the AMP Global Youth Career Chat. My name is Sanjoli, and I will be your moderator for today. I'm incredibly excited for this session, and I hope you all are too. We organize these chats to strengthen our alumni community, connect people from different parts of AMP's network, and highlight the inspiring journeys of civic professionals. We're going to start off with a brief introduction from our speaker and get right into the conversation. If you're watching online, please post your questions and we'll try to get them all in. It is my pleasure to now welcome Mr. Patrick McDermott, who is currently working in the nonprofit sector, to briefly introduce himself.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Pat McDermott. I am a nonprofit professional. My current position is as digital operations manager for a nonprofit organization called Common Threads. We work to provide cooking and nutrition education programming to under-resourced communities around the country. I've been with the organization now going on my 9th year, which in nonprofit professional terms seems like a lifetime. I started with the organization back in 2013 as one of their chef instructors. We have chef instructors that actually deliver many of our programs on a regular basis. And so I had worked in restaurant kitchens, which I can talk about in terms of career path before I came to Common Threads, and found that I wanted to take what I was learning there and really apply it to a nonprofit context and do that cause-related work. And so managed to get with the organization there, and have since then worked my way up through the ranks in terms of working on a number of different evaluation projects with them as a study coordinator, to managing their programming in the DC area, because I'm based in Annapolis, Maryland. And then have since moved into a position of digital operations manager. So really encompassing and managing all of the IT, hardware, and software related functions of the organization. So that relates everywhere from making sure people have working computers to do all their work, to making sure Zoom works properly for everyone and has all the accounts that they have and that they need for the different functions of their roles. So that is a very brief background. We can get into a bit more, including also my history with AMP, because I used to work for AMP many years ago. Before it was even called AMP, it was called Americans for Informed Democracy. So I can tell a bit more about that story a little later. So.
Thank you so much. So
Yeah.
my first question is, how did you discover that this is what you're passionate about doing, and how did you narrow down your interests to find this path?
Mm-hmm. So it definitely took some time, but I found that I really have found my niche in terms of what I'm really interested in. And when I think back to what I was always really interested in, even when I was younger, it seems almost kind of obvious that this is where I landed, because I was always kind of headed in this direction, but sometimes it takes a roundabout way to get there. I had always really been interested in systems and process, and how things go from an idea that you have in your mind to where it is that it is actually existing in the real world. Like, how do you tangibly operationalize an idea? That's really what I focus on. That's really what I'm committed to. It can get very technical very quickly, and so you can really get into the weeds of a lot of different things. But what I do it for, and ultimately what I'm most passionate about, is how can I enable people to be able to do what it is that they do in the most effective and efficient way possible. And I choose to focus my efforts on nonprofits because that is what I'm most interested in. That's what I feel I can best serve in terms of my expertise. But in terms of, where I came to this, when I was working in nonprofits right out of college, including at AID, there was definitely a demonstrated need for someone to be able to focus in on making sure that our systems were operating and running as efficiently as possible to be able to do the kinds of things we were looking to do on a day-to-day basis. And so I took up that torch and decided that that was something that I was going to focus in on, and I was really interested in. And that's been a pretty consistent theme in almost everything that I've done as far as my career goes. So when I had left AID, I was working in restaurant kitchens, and one of the things that really resonated with me in terms of working in a restaurant kitchen, aside from working with food, because I love food, I love to eat, is how organized and efficient a kitchen needs to run in order to be able to do like a busy dinner service. If you've never worked in a restaurant kitchen before, some of the best chefs in the world are the most OCD, precise, organized people on the planet. Everything has to have everything in its place, also called mise en place, making sure you are all prepped up and set and ready to go so that when you are cooking something on a line and you reach behind you for something, what you're expecting to be there is there and it never changes. So you can be really fast and you can push things out of the kitchen constantly. And that really resonated with me. That was the way my brain always used to work, and it still works to that day. And the thing that really stuck with me from that experience, moving on into other experiences, including where I'm at now at Common Threads, has been that mentality of making sure that you are as prepared and as set up for success as possible. If you don't pay attention to the process, if you don't pay attention to the details in how you get from point A to point B, you're going to end up with a lot of headaches, a lot of confusion, a lack of clarity on where it is that you want to get to. You oftentimes divert in a lot of different ways, and that's not helpful to you or to really anybody. And so it's very much a technical position in a lot of different ways, given the tools that I work with, but I see it more so as a type of role where you have to have the kind of 30,000-foot view, the big picture view, and then also then know, which is sometimes an entirely different skill set, to be able to what it is that you need to do in terms of moving the pieces around of the puzzle to get it so that, okay, based off of where you want to go, this is what needs to happen in order to get there. And so the process and the systems is always something that's been fascinating to me. And I'm just really excited that I am in a role that I get to do that every single day. So
That is so amazing and extremely interesting. Thank you so much.
yeah.
Since I know like finding a passion can be challenging for many students and young people, so this was definitely very helpful.
Yeah.
What is the biggest misconception about your career field?
Oh boy. Well, I would say one of the biggest misconceptions is, in many ways you can see kind of what I do as the engineer that makes sure that the engine is running, so the ship or the car or whatever other machine functions, so it puts out whatever it is that it looks to put out. And in many ways, the role that I have is a bit invisible in some ways, because if the machine's running properly, then you don't even know that I'm doing a lot behind the scenes to make sure that it works and functions well. You only know I exist if it breaks. And that's the thing I'm trying to prevent in the first place. So it's a bit of a catch-22. You want to be recognized and acknowledged for your work and what you do, but that oftentimes means that you have to be very self-promotional in terms of what it is that you're doing. Because if you're just doing what you're doing at the end of the day and not really telling everybody what it is that you're doing, it can be invisible, and a lot of people take it for granted. And so I think it's those types of people, and it's this type of position where I think its contributions oftentimes gets overlooked in terms of how critical, what I do and what people in a similar position to me do to the functioning of an organization and how essential it is. So I think that's a big misconception about the kind of position that I have and the people that hold these types of positions.
That's so amazing to be a part of like a big working machine, except you're a part that's, so integral to the process.
Yeah.
Next, I was wondering if you have any tips for students who are just getting started. What should they do? What should they keep in mind?
Mm-hmm. So, if you're interested in going into a role that is very specific to what it is that I do, I would say one of the things to always kind of focus on and be aware of is what I do on a daily basis changes in a lot of different ways. So some days are much more preoccupied with one particular aspect of my job, but then another day or set of days could be something completely different that I'm focusing in on. But it all kind of fits under the umbrella of what it is that I do and what my responsibility is. So from that standpoint, what I would recommend is there's nothing wrong with, say, a student wanting to focus in on becoming an expert in one particular thing. That's great in and of itself. But in a role that's similar to mine, you have to almost be a kind of jack of all trades. And so you have to know a lot about, or you have to know a little bit about a lot of different things. And it's oftentimes said, like, you have to know enough to be dangerous, but not necessarily be like the expert. And so to be able to be in that kind of role where you can have that level of knowledge base in all of these different things is going to be best helpful to you when you have the kind of responsibilities that I have, which range from making sure, like I mentioned before, that people have the kind of computers that they need to function, all the way to server maintenance for our website, to managing our database that we hold all of our data in, to helping to translate our website into different languages. Those are just some of the examples of the kinds of things that I do on a regular basis. And so being a jack of all trades is definitely something I would recommend for sure. And just be open to lots of different things that come your way and be curious. The other piece of advice I would give is never, ever, ever stop learning, especially in the realm of what I do, because I focus so much on technology, and technology is changing at a rapid pace every single day. And so you always have to have a curious learner's mindset. And so if something is new, you go and you research it, you look things up, you learn, you teach yourself. I couldn't tell you how many things I've taught myself in terms of how to do X, Y, and Z. And so that ability to be able to learn, to be able to teach yourself, to be able to be resourceful and look things up and find answers to questions that you don't necessarily know right off the bat, that's going to be a skill set that is going to pay you dividends in the long run, for sure. Because formal education is fantastic in terms of providing that foundation, but it's not going to teach you everything you need to know in terms of the working world. And you're always going to have to constantly be learning and constantly be educating yourself about different things, because things are changing all the time.
Thank you so much. That actually segues perfectly into our next question. What about
Mhm.
college and grad school? What should students keep in mind or take advantage of when they are in that phase of their education?
Yeah. So, similar to what I mentioned before about trying to make sure that you're getting as well-rounded an education as possible in lots of different subject areas. Um, this is something that I'm very thankful I went to a small liberal arts school for, because it focuses in on teaching a more well-rounded experience to your students. But I think there's probably a bit more that I probably could have done as well. Graduate school, it's a little bit of a different animal. I haven't gone to graduate school. It's always kind of been in the back of my mind to go back to school for, but um, graduate school very much is a kind of, okay, if you know what you want to specialize in and you know what you want to really focus in on learning, then you go to graduate school for that. When I graduated my undergraduate college, I didn't know that, and so I wasn't about to make some sort of commitment to another 2, 3, sometimes even 4-year program to do something that I wasn't entirely sure I wanted. So, I would definitely advise any student that if you don't know definitively what you want to do and you just kind of want to explore things after your 4-year undergraduate degree, definitely hold off on graduate school until you're ready. Especially given the fact that you're probably got a bunch of student loans from undergrad anyway that I am still paying off, and you don't want to add more debt onto that unnecessarily. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, I would say as well-rounded an education as possible. Try and become that kind of jack of all trades. It's not only going to help you in positions like mine, but it's also just going to generally help you as well when you are looking to build a career, because the more exposure you have a lot of different things, the more possibilities are open for you. Don't necessarily get that tunnel vision and think, I just want to do this, just want to do that. It's much better, I think, from the standpoint of being young, to open yourself up to a whole world of possibilities, because then that means that the potential pathways for you to take in terms of what you want to build careers out of and lives out of is seemingly endless. So
Definitely. And I think this also connects to what you said about being a lifelong learner. You have to keep trying things. If you could go back and redo your entire education and career journey, would you do anything differently?
um, Well, I think what I probably would have done, I think I still would have kept my major. I was a political science major. I loved my professors. I wouldn't have changed it or traded it for anything. I think when I first was in high school and I was thinking of going to college, my first thought, aside from maybe being a political science major, was also to be a philosophy minor. And I took a few philosophy classes and I really enjoyed them. But I mean, it's been a long time, so I can't remember exactly why I decided not to pursue that, but I didn't. And I regret not doing that because, especially when going to a liberal arts school, but I think also just college in generally, this is something that you should focus on is, don't necessarily become so preoccupied with trying to find a major that is going to land you into a particular career path. Like I said, the more open you keep yourself in terms of the possibilities that are out there, and the more you build up a skill set as to how to think and how to learn, that will set you up for much, much greater success in the long run than it will just like staying down one particular path. Unless you know exactly what it is that you want to do and you have no qualms about what it is that you're committed to doing, great. You go do what you're going to do. But for me, at least, and for those that might be in a similar boat that what I was, I had lots of different avenues that I was thinking about going down, and I didn't necessarily know definitively what it was. And so I wanted to keep it as open as possible. And so my major would have been the same, but the minor, I think a philosophy minor would have definitely been something I would have wanted to do more of. Because even today, I still love learning about different philosophies and those types of things. But on the opposite end of that spectrum, one particular skill set that I really wish I would have taken more classes in that I didn't, that would have definitely helped me now, is computer science and web development. So I know my way around a little bit in some code, like HTML and CSS, but if I was to be able to get that kind of fundamental understanding and underpinning of all of that, that would have given me a significant leg up in a lot of different things that I'm having to teach myself now in terms of basic fundamentals in computer science and web coding, web development, those types of things. So
That's so awesome, really amazing. Thank you so much for that answer and all your incredible insights. If anyone's watching over YouTube, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. But I have another question in the meantime. What is the most fulfilling part of your job?
The most fulfilling, I would say, is definitely that instance where I am working with a colleague of mine, and let's say they have a particular problem that they've come across where I really wish I could be able to do X, Y, Z. And I go to them and I say, okay, so if this is the problem that you're looking to solve, let me help you try and craft whatever the solution might be for that. And so in terms of what that solution could look like, it can be anything from let's set up this particular process automation in our CRM that allows you to be able to do this so you don't have to do it manually anymore. Or it could be, let's set up this project in our project management software and let's do it this way so that we can give updates to your supervisor without you having to have a check-in meeting. Because the one thing I will tell you as you get to become a professional is everyone loves a meeting, even when they're not necessary. So from that standpoint, these types of things definitely add up when you are working 40 hours a week. And so the less meetings that you have and the more time you have to actually focus on the work that you're doing, the better. So it's those particular problems that I'm helping people solve. And then when we craft a solution and then I'm able to show that solution to that person and then the reaction and the response is like, this is great. This is exactly what I wanted. This is going to save me so much time. This is going to help me do this. So it frees me up to be able to do that. It's those types of things that are the most fulfilling part. That's why I do what I do, because I want to be able to enable them to be able to do their best work. And so if I can help in that regard, that's a good day for me.
Thank you so much. How have you grown in your role and grown as a person through all these experiences?
So I think I've grown quite a bit in the role that I have. As I mentioned before, I've had a number of different roles in the current organization that I'm at. And I think in the time that I started with them compared to where I'm at right now, I think I've grown quite a bit, not just in terms of competency and kind of what I know how to do, but also how I can go about doing it. And I think that also ties into how I've grown as a person as well. So, if I think back to, early professional experiences, there was probably a certain level of self-assuredness and, I'll say cockiness to a certain extent in terms of, well, I know best, blah, 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 this, that, and the third. I think now, although there's still a bit more of that kind of self-assuredness, I feel that there's much more value in feedback and getting that kind of feedback early and often and frequently, and having it be open and honest feedback, and understanding that collaboration and cooperation are not the same thing, and collaboration is what you're going for, not cooperation. Cooperation is just agreeing just to agree. Collaboration is honest disagreements, working through conflicts, those types of things, and doing that in a way where it's not rooted in any kind of like personal animosity. It's just a different way of seeing the world. And in some ways, I am completely and utterly wrong about how we can go about solving a particular problem because there was some factor or circumstance I didn't think about, because I don't have to deal with it on a daily basis. And so that only comes from working with others, and having that kind of open, honest feedback loop and collaborative environment to be able to do your work in. So I thrive in those types of environments now. I love doing it. And I think that's been reflective of the type of growth that I've experienced as a person in my professional career as well, understanding that I can't do it all myself, that it requires a team and it requires collaborative effort to really get anything done at the end of the day. So.
Great, thank you so much. Could you please expand about the career path when it comes to like working in a restaurant kitchen and then moving to the nonprofit sector?
Mm-hmm. So, when I first came down to the DC area, so I grew up in Eastern Pennsylvania, and I went to school there. I had always kind of wanted to go down to the DC area because I wanted to work in at least cause-related issues. Maybe not necessarily the traditional, like become a Hill staffer and do all of those types of things in political circles, but I wanted to be where the political action was. And so I was lucky enough to be able to work with AID, Americans for Informed Democracy, and I headed up their peace and security program. And so got a crash course in a lot of different issues, especially around things like nuclear nonproliferation and disarmament, and Islamophobia, and all sorts of different issues and topics. And it was one of the first kind of nonprofit related jobs that I had. And so it was a tremendous learning experience, learned a tremendous amount. But, circumstances are such that I found myself in the restaurant industry because right around the time I was employed at AID was also the global financial crisis of 2008. And so funding was drying up pretty much everywhere for lots of different efforts and initiatives. And so, at the end of the day, you got to pay your bills somehow. And so you find whatever it is that you can in order to be able to do that. Restaurant kitchens and restaurant work was aplenty, at least, in terms of opportunities. And I found that, anytime I'm in a position, I try and make the most of it as much as possible. So I started working front of house capacities with serving, but found that the kitchen really called to me and was really appealing. And I always liked cooking when I was a kid. My parents were definitely ones that like to cook at home. So managed to find an opportunity to work in those kitchens, and hopped from restaurant to restaurant to restaurant, and learned quite a lot. Managed to get under the tutelage of a very talented chef who worked for Michelin-starred chefs, and he taught me pretty much everything I know. But eventually the grind of restaurant kitchen life definitely wears on you. You're working 14-hour days, 5-6 days a week, very early morning hours or very late night hours. And so, that's not necessarily a life that you want to continue for the long run. So decided that I wanted to try and find my way into cause-related work again, to be able to get back into the sphere of what I had started my career in. And managed to find common threads, and it was very fortuitous. It was a perfect melding of what I wanted, which was getting back to that cause-related work, but also being able to take advantage of all of this experience I was getting working in restaurants. And so managed to start as a chef instructor, and again, once I got there, making the most of the opportunity, showing that I was committed and passionate about the cause, wanted to improve upon what it is that we were doing, and seized opportunities as they came upon me. So that's kind of how I got to where I'm at right now.
That's amazing. How did your work in the restaurant kitchen specifically like impact your work in the nonprofit sector? Like what skills did you learn maybe that you could cross apply in like both areas?
Yeah. So I mentioned before the process by which you do things matters in nonprofit realms as well as in restaurant kitchens, especially. So paying attention to those systems and processes most definitely was something that carried over. I would also say too, working environments and making sure that you are, working in an environment that is collaborative and trusting, and is also healthy and balanced. I mentioned before, restaurant kitchen life, 14 hours a day, like that, those are long days. And so I think one of the things that a lot of my professional experiences have taught me, in addition to what to do, is also what maybe not to do. Sometimes that's actually the most helpful experience you can get. And what at least the working in restaurant kitchens taught me what not to do, or at least what not to look for in nonprofit work, was don't look for working for nonprofits that are going to work you to the bone, that are going to overwork you, that are going to have you commit 12, 14-hour days for very little compensation and those types of things. Like, make sure you put in your time, yes, but also make sure you're compensated appropriately and fairly for it, that you're working in an environment that has the right kind of culture and the right kind of attitudes towards treatment of its employees, and make sure that it takes care of them and those types of things. And so, luckily I've been with an organization that's been able to do that in large measure. And so I think that was something that working in restaurant kitchens definitely helped inform what I do now in nonprofits, is making sure that I know what to look for and what I want. So
That's amazing. What are some of your favorite positions and why were they your favorite? What made them so appealing?
yeah. So not counting what I'm doing right now, which is probably my favorite so far. Working at Aid was definitely one of my favorite ones, because it was that kind of crash course in working for a nonprofit, and learned so much about program management, in networking, and especially working with young people, working with policymakers on policy advocacy campaigns, how to put together an issue campaign, and what the kind of strategic thought process goes behind that, applying for funding to grantors, and putting together things like work plans and logic models and all of those different kinds of things. Like, I definitely got a crash course in a lot of that has definitely stayed with me since then. And then also I just got a chance to learn all about like what a CRM is, and all the different players that are out there, and what its functionality is. Like, that has most definitely applied to what I'm doing right now, for sure. Right before Aid, I was also with a group called Global Zero, which works on nuclear nonproliferation and disarmament. And I was lucky enough to be a part of their team that did a road tour, which was basically a screening tour for a new documentary that they had produced, which was all about trying to get public support behind a elimination of nuclear weapons worldwide. And that was an unforgettable experience. You basically went with two other people in a van, and you were given a certain portion of the country that you had to tour around, and you made all of these connections with different college campuses to screen this documentary that you were carrying with you. And you set up tables to be able to sell merchandise and do all of these different things. And you did this for, I think, like 6 weeks, 9 weeks. I made some lifelong friends as a result of that road tour that I still stay in touch with. And I would definitely if you're young and you have the opportunity to be able to do that, definitely do that. It's a little bit hard for me to justify doing that now. I have a wife and I have a 9-month-old, so that's a little harder to do. But if you're young and have the opportunity to, I would definitely recommend doing that. And then aside from that, I would say, the restaurant work that I did, I learned a tremendous amount in every position that I was in there. My favorite one was probably my last one, which was working front of house. It was as a server and a bartender, and it was at a Middle Eastern restaurant. And it was great food. It was great people. It was probably one of the better restaurant jobs that I had. And I still stay in touch with them as well and still connect with them whenever I can. So yeah, I would definitely say those are the highlights for me for sure.
That sounds amazing. All of those experiences, just like touring in a van, that sounds really, really
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah.
Um, what makes it your favorite? What exactly you do?
Sorry, I missed the first part of that question. Is it for this particular position?
Yeah, what you're currently working as.
Hmm. So it's my favorite position because one, it seems to me like the culmination of everything that I felt like I was kind of in the direction of doing anyway. And I specifically within my organization kind of advocated for me to be able to have this particular type of role, which they hadn't ever really had before. I knew and understood what the need was, and I was really pitching to them that this is something that I need to be doing full time, and here are all the reasons why. And so, in terms of why it's my favorite, I think the variety of what I work on a day-to-day basis definitely keeps it interesting for me. There's a tremendous amount of potential in the role. It's always keeping me on my toes. Sometimes folks will come to me and they'll have questions about, hey, can we do XYZ? Or this is the problem that they're looking to solve. And I may not necessarily have an answer right out of the gate for them. And so that then requires me to go look it up or go learn something or figure out the best way to do it. I like positions and I like roles that challenge me. The last thing that I want to be is bored. So from that standpoint, I really enjoy it because it's always something that has an opportunity for growth present for me. And generally speaking, I just love the empowering effect of technology. When used appropriately and when used correctly, it has a transformative effect on people and organizations to be able to do so much more than what they ever were able to do before. The fact that you can now just fundraise online when it wasn't all that long ago that nonprofits were relying upon people to send them checks in the mail. But now you can fundraise on Facebook and YouTube and all of these different places now is just a transformative set of technologies that can really enable organizations to do so much more than what they were able to do in the past. So that in and of itself is very exciting to me, and I love being involved in that. So.
Could you please repeat where exactly you work and what your position is? Sorry, I think
Sure.
my Wi-Fi cut.
Yeah, no worries. So the role that I have now is as digital operations manager, and it's at Common Threads, which is a national nonprofit that teaches children and families and communities how to cook healthy food in under-resourced communities around the country.
Amazing. Is there anything that you think I missed that you want to talk about, or anything you think is important that we should know?
No, those are great questions. I think the only thing that I would add is, and I spoke to this a bit before as well, is that don't necessarily feel as a young college age person that you have to have it all figured out. I am still figuring things out as I go, and I am in my mid 30s. So don't necessarily feel that the pressure that might be imposed upon you by other adults to say, oh, well, you need to do this and do that in order to be able to do this, that, and the third. I am now officially an adult, and I am telling you, you don't necessarily need that. Okay. There are lots of opportunities that are out there for you to be able to make whatever life you want. And I think the thing to just always remember and keep in mind is, as long as you build up the skill sets that are going to best enable you and prepare you to deal with life as it comes, the better and more successful you're going to be. So it's not necessarily so much that you understand one particular subject area in and out. That's always great. But the thing that is more important in my eyes is, going back to what I said before, that ability to be able to process, to think, to learn, to be resourceful, and always have the mindset of your learning journey never stops. You're always learning, and you should always have that as your default position, because things are constantly changing. The one constant in life is that change is inevitable, and so you need to roll with the punches, figure out what the change is going to be as much as you possibly can, and just adapt and adjust. I think the past 2 years of a pandemic have certainly demonstrated that you need to adapt and adjust, and we're not out of it, and so we're going to have to continue doing it. But who knows what the next 2, 5, 10, 15, 20 years are going to look like. And so you just need to know what you need in order to do, to be able to adapt to all of those changing circumstances. Unless you have a crystal ball. Then if you have a crystal ball, just tell me what's coming and I'll be able to prepare as well. So
Great. Thank you once again to Mr. Patrick McDermott for your incredible insights and ideas. We hope you enjoyed the session and were able to gain inspiration for your own journey.